Agnetha Fältskog has always been the quiet flame at the center of ABBA's global storm. While her voice soared through stadiums and lit up countless hearts, she remained intensely private, soft-spoken, elusive, and often retreating from the fame that relentlessly chased her. Now at 75, after decades of silence and solitude, the Swedish songbird has done something no one expected. She cracked open the vault of her most personal desires and named, for the first time, 7 legendary artists she once fantasized about sleeping with. Not in scandal, not in shame, but with a kind of cheeky, fearless honesty that only comes with age, and the wisdom to know that life is too short to keep every secret buried. For years, fans saw her only through the lens of ABBA, the blonde with the heavenly voice, the one who captured global hearts in songs like The Winner Takes It All and SOS. But few knew how much Agnetha yearned, not just for love, but for passion, mystery, and connection beyond the spotlight. As the band skyrocketed to fame in the 70s and 80s, her world became smaller, more controlled, and lonelier. She was idolized, yes, but rarely seen as a woman with desires of her own. Now, as she enters her twilight years, she's peeling back the curtain, one name at a time, revealing the men who once made her heart and imagination race. Some were fellow musicians. Others were actors, voices she listened to on the radio, or men she briefly crossed paths with on red carpets and television studios. But each name holds a story, a spark, a what-if that she's finally ready to share. It's not about conquest. It's about confession. And maybe, in some small way, it's about freedom. So who are these 7 artists that Agnetha Fältskog secretly wanted to sleep with? And why has she decided to tell the world now? Let's find out. From the moment Agnetha Fältskog stepped into the spotlight, audiences didn't just fall in love with her voice, they fell in love with her. Soft-spoken yet radiant, she embodied a rare mix of vulnerability and mystery that made her unforgettable. As one of the 2 iconic female leads of ABBA, she sang songs of heartbreak and longing with such emotion that fans assumed she must be living every lyric. And yet, even as she stood in the glare of global stardom, there was always something distant in her eyes. An aura of someone who gave the world her art, but kept her heart carefully protected. Born in Jönköping, Sweden, Agnetha was a romantic at her core. Before ABBA, her solo career in Sweden was filled with heartfelt ballads about love, dreams, and silent yearning. She was drawn to deep emotion, to melodies that told the stories she couldn't always express out loud. And while her marriage to fellow ABBA member Björn Ulvaeus captured headlines during the band's rise, it wasn't the fairy tale romance many believed it to be. The emotional unraveling of their relationship became the hidden subtext behind some of ABBA's most powerful songs. The Winner Takes It All wasn't just a performance, it was a confession. But what fans didn't see was that Agnetha, even amid the heartbreak, still believed in passion. Still imagined what it would feel like to be consumed by desire, not duty. She kept those thoughts private, never indulging the press, never hinting at her inner world. And yet, behind closed doors, there were men she admired from afar. Men whose music moved her, whose charisma caught her breath. It wasn't about celebrity gossip or reckless infatuation. It was about the possibility of something more human, more spontaneous, more real. As ABBA's fame intensified, Agnetha's personal life shrank. She became increasingly reclusive, wary of reporters and tabloids that turned even her glances into headlines. She famously hated flying, hated touring, and found the relentless demands of global fame to be suffocating. In the face of it all, she retreated, not into bitterness but into her imagination. There, in her own private world, she kept the names of those who stirred her desire tucked safely away. She never acted on them. She didn't need to. Sometimes, a fantasy is more powerful than reality ever could be. Now at 75, that guarded young woman has become an introspective elder with nothing left to prove. And with the passage of time comes perspective. Agnetha has finally begun to open up about the life she lived and the life she wondered about. In a rare moment of candor, she recently shared a surprising list. 7 men, 7 artists, who once captured her attention in ways that went beyond admiration. It wasn't tabloid fodder. It wasn't scandalous. It was honest, wistful, and tinged with the kind of quiet laughter that comes from finally letting yourself say the things you once only whispered in your head. And so, for the first time ever, Agnetha Fältskog is naming names, not to stir controversy, but to remind the world that even the most graceful icons have desires, have fantasies, and have stories they never told. Until now. At the height of ABBA's global fame, Agnetha Fältskog was living every young singer's dream, or so it seemed. Sold-out arenas, platinum records, adoring fans screaming her name. But behind the shimmering lights and choreographed smiles was a woman slowly being consumed by the isolating nature of success. As the band toured across continents in the late 70s and early 80s, Agnetha began to experience the emotional toll of a life dictated by fame. She was often physically present, but emotionally adrift. Nights were spent in hotel rooms, far from her children, far from home, far from the quiet countryside of Sweden, where she once found comfort. She hated flying. Her phobia was so intense that she would often choose grueling travel routes just to avoid it. This fear became a metaphor for how she felt about the entire experience. Unmoored, out of control, constantly hurtling towards something she didn't quite want. Fame had its perks, yes, but it also came with walls. She was watched, analyzed, and idealized to such a degree that any notion of a personal life, of intimacy, spontaneity, real connection, felt impossible. Surrounded by thousands, Agnetha had never felt more alone. It was during these long tours and recording sessions that her mind began to wander, not out of boredom but out of longing. Her marriage to Björn had already crumbled, leaving her emotionally raw and painfully visible. Fans devoured the story, not knowing how deeply it hurt. And while she never entertained romantic entanglements during this fragile period, she couldn't help but feel drawn to certain figures in the industry, men whose presence exuded confidence, who seemed to embody a freedom she no longer had. A smile exchanged backstage, a voice that lingered on the radio, a photograph in a magazine. These small moments sparked daydreams. She imagined a different kind of life, one where she could flirt without consequence, feel desired without being branded scandalous, where she could experience affection that wasn't shadowed by divorce papers or paparazzi lenses. But she kept these fantasies to herself, journaling sometimes, confiding only in her closest friends when the loneliness became too sharp. Even then, she rarely named names. The world saw ABBA as a pristine unit, glossy and untouchable, but the truth was far more human. Agnetha was a woman slowly unraveling under the weight of expectation, and those private thoughts of desire, fleeting as they may have been, offered a kind of quiet salvation. They reminded her she was still alive, still capable of feeling something that wasn't duty or exhaustion. And as the band eventually disbanded, and she withdrew into the calm of Sweden's forests and countryside, those memories of longing stayed with her. They didn't fade. In fact, they aged with her, gaining depth, sweetness, and even a bit of humor. Now, in the calm of her 70s, Agnetha looks back at those days not with bitterness, but with a soft, knowing smile. She remembers the crushes, the temptations, and the names she never dared say out loud. Until now. Because sometimes, it takes a lifetime to be bold enough to whisper your secrets to the world. If you've made it this far, you're clearly captivated by Agnetha's remarkable journey. So please take a second to like this video, subscribe for more emotional celebrity stories, and drop a comment below. Which name on this list surprises you the most? Now let's dive in. When Agnetha finally revealed the names, those 7 artists who once stirred her imagination, it wasn't done with shock value or vanity. It was more like leafing through an old photo album, filled with memories she had only now decided to share. Her tone was soft, reflective, occasionally cheeky. "I was young," she said with a laugh, "and yes, I had eyes like anyone else." The first name she gave was David Bowie. He was magnetic, she recalled. Elegant but wild. He made you feel like he had seen something the rest of us hadn't. They had crossed paths only briefly, but she remembered his eyes, how they seemed to look through you, not at you. Second was Rod Stewart. Agnetha admitted to finding his rugged charm irresistible. There was something raw about him, she said. He made you feel like you could misbehave and it would be perfectly fine. Number 3 was Cat Stevens, who, like Agnetha, carried a spiritual inward energy. He seemed lost in his own poetry, she mused, and I found that very beautiful. Her fourth choice was the one that surprised people the most, Prince. Though their styles couldn't have been more different, she admired his confidence, his unapologetic sensuality. He was hypnotic, she said simply. Watching him perform was like watching someone completely in control of desire. At number 5 was Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees. Oh, the voice, she smiled. And the hair. He was such a romantic figure in my mind. If he had ever sung to me in a dark room, I think I would have melted. Then came Bryan Ferry of Roxy Music, cool, suave, and cerebral. He felt like an elegant mystery, she said, like a man who'd write you a letter instead of sending a message. I like that. And finally, the 7th name, Freddie Mercury. Agnetha clarified she never expected anything to come of it, but found herself drawn to his flamboyance and his warmth. There was something so safe about him. I could have sat next to him in bed, talked all night, and felt more seen than I ever did with anyone else. What made these revelations so moving wasn't just the names themselves. It was the tenderness with which Agnetha described them. This wasn't a list of conquests, nor was it meant to scandalize. It was a woman, now in the autumn of her life, looking back on the faces that lit something within her during a time when so much felt cold and mechanical. I didn't act on these feelings, she said. But sometimes the fantasy is better than the reality. It gives you something to smile about when the days get quiet. There was no regret in her voice, just gratitude for the music, the mystery, and the rare moments when desire made her feel like more than just a voice in a machine. These 7 men may never know the role they played in her private world, but for Agnetha, simply saying their names aloud was an act of reclamation. A reminder that even icons have untold stories, and sometimes, the most human ones are the ones we keep closest to the heart. At 75, Agnetha Fältskog is no longer the ethereal pop princess dancing across stages in sequined gowns. She is a woman who has lived many lives, star, wife, mother, recluse, survivor, and who now carries her past like a patchwork quilt of shimmering highs and private heartbreaks. Sharing the names of the 7 men she once secretly desired wasn't an act of vanity or nostalgia. It was something deeper. It was her way of reconnecting with the girl who lived in the quiet corners of hotel rooms, gazing out windows after long performances, wondering what might have been if the world hadn't always demanded so much of her. For so long, she was expected to be perfect, flawless on camera, poised in interviews, always gracious, never messy. But the truth is, even in her prime, she never felt fully seen. Agnetha's revelation is not just about lust or fantasy. It's about reclaiming her story as a woman who wanted to feel deeply, who longed for touch, for electricity, for connection that wasn't filtered through studio glass or stage lights. Now, with more years behind her than ahead, she speaks not for attention but for peace. She has no desire to spark headlines or trend online. If anything, she avoided attention for most of her adult life. But perhaps, as time slows and the world grows quieter, she realized that telling the truth about her desires, however simple or playful, was a final gift to herself. And in doing so, she gives something to the rest of us too. Permission. Permission to admit that we all carry secret sparks, names we never said out loud, feelings we tucked away because they weren't appropriate or practical. Her confession, wrapped in laughter and tenderness, is a reminder that we are allowed to remember, to long, to speak our truth, even decades later. There is no expiration date on desire, no shame in revisiting the hearts that once stirred ours, and no weakness in saying, yes, I wanted him, I wanted that, and I don't regret it. What's most moving is not the list itself, but the grace with which she holds it now. There is no bitterness, no apology, only the gentle, wise acceptance that life didn't give her everything, but it gave her enough. Enough beauty to sing about, enough pain to feel alive, enough privacy to heal, and now enough courage to finally speak. As she looks out from her quiet home in Sweden, surrounded by trees, with no tour dates on the horizon and no fans waiting outside, Agnetha Fältskog is not lonely. She is full of music, memories, and the quiet satisfaction of a truth no longer kept in the dark. At 75, she has proven that even after a lifetime of being idolized by millions, it's not fame that gives you freedom, it's honesty. And sometimes, all it takes to feel free is saying what you once only dared to feel.